There you go. We're in. We're finally in.
Yep.
It took a little time off, as one needs to do sometimes,
Right.
from time to time.
Right.
I felt like we were cooking at the end of last year. Like we put out a lot of episodes real quick.
Yeah.
Little time off, recuperate, watch Buffalo win a playoff game. It was a good time.
It was fun.
Yeah.
That was fun. Yeah.
Anyways, without further ado, what you're here for, if you probably clicked on the title, let's talk about Mac Miller.
Let's do it.
Good guy, Mac Miller.
Mm-hmm.
We're here to review the new album, second album that's come out since his passing. Balloonerism is the name. Yeah. I'll start off by saying here, I guess this is as good a place as any. I've always had a lot of respect for Mac Miller, carving out kind of his own lane in a world where inevitably being a white rapper, you're always kind of like got comparisons to guys like Eminem and that kind of thing, and people are always going to kind of put you in that context. And he was one of the first white rappers that I was like keenly aware that was just kind of in a different avenue, doing his own thing. And then also a lot of respect for the way his career kind of evolved throughout it, starting off really fun, witty, goofy, and then getting very thought-provoking and sort of existential as he continued on through his career. Obviously heartbreaking with him passing, going through a lot of challenges and problems as a person, and then so I'll start off by saying that despite having like a lot of respect for him, he wasn't ever a person that I was like really hardcore into their music.
Yeah.
I listened to quite a few albums of his throughout, whenever, but they were never like heavy rotation albums for me. I would say Watching Movies with the Sound Off is probably my personal favorite. But I also have a lot of respect for projects like Swimming that came out later in his life. But yeah, I mean, like you told me before listening to this album, a reason you were kind of excited to is you never really dove into his music a whole lot.
Yeah.
Prior to this, like what was your take on Mac Miller?
Somebody once described to me that Mac Miller was a slightly better version of Macklemore. And I was like, okay, well, I wasn't even really a Macklemore fan.
Yeah, sure.
So let me just not listen to him. I just don't care.
Yeah.
So this is the first album I've heard from Mac all the way through.
Wow.
I have quite a few songs from him though that I do really enjoy. Party on 5th Street. There's one off of Swimming. Anyways, have a couple songs from him. Really enjoy. I've been shown by Mikey actually some of his more thought provoking ones. Some work he's done with Absol.
Yeah.
So I definitely have a lot more respect for him now. I wish that I got into his music when he was still here.
Sure.
Because I hate feeling like a fan because they're dead.
Yeah.
I never want to do that.
Yeah.
But I also, if I like them, I'm going to like them. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But, yeah, first album, didn't really have anything besides like, oh, he's the witty, fun, rapping kid.
Yeah.
So
not a whole lot of introduction prior, but like definitely a feel for what kind of his various moments of his career and musically styles that he went into.
Yeah.
I mean, this project to me, when it was announced and when it was leading up to it coming out, I was definitely hesitant, as I always feel like I am when people put out albums that were, like our posthumous albums where they're putting something together that the artist themselves isn't involved in. And even more so hesitant finding out that this was like a pretty old compilation, that this was not like snippets from recently before his passing or like snippets throughout his career, that this was like an old project. Definitely gave me some pause, feeling like, would he really want that out then? But also at the same time, hearing that, it was like, okay, at least it's like from the same thing, you know, like it's not just hodgepodge together like some artists' albums are these days, and just tied together with a bunch of features. But yeah, overall, in listening to it, I definitely did feel like I was pleasantly surprised how well it flowed together and how it actually felt like a Mac Miller project.
Yep.
Definitely some ups and downs. I'll get into some of that, but yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah.
Starting off talking about the production on the project here. This is an area of Mac's music that I've always liked. Like, I always think he has really cool, fun production, but he's never a guy that I would like when I'm thinking of what?
Nothing like blown away.
Well, and just maybe this is like just that I don't think about it, but also like someone that I would never consider. Oh, when I come to great production like this, you know, guys like Travis Scott, Kanye West come to mind. It's not like Mac Miller's one of those names that pops up when I think of that.
Right.
But yeah, overall, I really did enjoy the production on this one. I thought it was pretty original, interesting. He used a lot of cool instrumentals, or instruments for his instrumentals that I was like not expecting to hear, which was a lot of fun. It was cool to find out that he did a lot of like the production personally on it, and that was a big part of putting this together for him. And really, I felt like the beats just provided a great canvas for like the thought-provoking content that he was going to dive into on each song. It felt like there's times where it feels like the beat or the instrumental on a song for some artists is just there to serve as like a basis for what, or like just for as something to put their vocals on, if that makes sense. That it's like it's secondary to what they have to say and do. But it felt like this one was very intertwined. Like it felt like there was a lot of empty space that was filled by a lot of instrumentals that kind of added to the feeling of the album, which I really appreciated and really enjoyed. So I gave it an 8.
Very nice. I ended up giving it a 7. From the things that I have heard from Mac and just some videos that I've watched, I've come to appreciate Mac as an underrated producer.
Yeah.
Just kind of seeing his process. There's this one video Mikey showed me where you're just watching his process and like it's just so fluid and he just knows what needs to be done. It has to be in this time. Oh, let me get this instrument because that'll help this one, and starts playing the piano and like keys are coming into his. It's the craziest thing.
Yeah.
So super underrated in my opinion.
Yeah.
I agree a lot with what you said. How a lot of these empty spaces, it's filled with just solid production.
Yeah.
A lot of it sounds very Mac Miller too. Like there's a certain sound for some artists where it's like, that's their sound.
Mm-hmm.
Like you hear it immediately, like, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And for me, like that, the whole album, except for maybe like one song, all felt like, like this is exactly what I picture a Mac album to be. So I gave it a 7.
For sure. Not to get too crazy with things here, but it's almost like I definitely felt at times like the instrumental, when it was filling like empty voids of lyrics, it's almost like it was trying to tell us something. And I don't mean to sound like Theo Vaughn. Like, you ever think the wind's trying to talk to us and we just don't know how to hear it? No, I don't mean it like that. But what I mean more so is like I think he placed it in a spot where like those empty spaces where the instrumental's there, where it kind of lets what he just said marinate with you, where he like uses that empty space to like let what he's talking about kind of resonate with you and like let you think about it.
Yeah.
Which is what I really liked about it. So
yeah.
Not too crazy, but like
I'll give you the best.
Jumping into the vocals now. Very distinct voice for Mac Miller. Very cool voice. Never really been his best skill in my mind. You know, I don't see him as like a Adam Levine or somebody like that, or even like a Post Malone on a hip hop style thing.
Right.
But it is very unique and very cool, and he's proven that he can do some cool and unique stuff with it, whether that's the upbeat, more energetic rapping, or a little more laid back melodic stuff. For me, this album still felt a little below his capabilities on all of the above for me. And this is where I kind of get into some of the like question marks I had about the album, like why, like did he really want this to come out? Because I think it doesn't really feel like his whole energy was going into his best performances across the board, whereas I feel like most of his other projects feel that way, like top to bottom. But particularly to me, it shows in the vocals here that it's just not really him at his best, which I feel like he normally showcased himself trying to be at his best musically. Not to say it's bad, like it does have its distinct cool sound to it, which I do really enjoy. So I did give it a 6, but definitely felt like it was a little bit below some of his best stuff to me.
Yeah. So the easy points when it comes to our vocal category, for me at least, is do you sound good?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
I'm not saying you got to sound professional, like Ariana Grande range, Travis Scott, auto-tune, like at least like levels or solid makes you sound good. No, you just got to, if I can listen to the album and I'm not like, this is hurting my ears, you get a pass. So Mac gets a pass, like automatically. Sure. Like you said, cool, unique voice, very distinct. One thing that I love that he does is he doesn't have the greatest melodic voice. Sure. Like he's not the best at singing. But what he is really good at to make it sound dope is he's really good at layering certain patches of his vocals where it's this more ominous, little bit whimsical, just ambiance. Like it's just there. Yeah. So I think he does really good at that.
Yeah.
The problem though is if you take away the layers, does it sound as cool as if you're layering it? No. And like I already expected that, but that's how I try to make it for everyone. So I gave him a 6 as well. But still some cool areas. Just it's just not his strongest point, and that's okay
for sure. To kind of step somewhat laterally, I guess, into talking about his lyrics. This is an area that I do feel like he excels at, but in a different avenue than maybe what you traditionally think of as good lyrics in hip hop. He's definitely had proven the witty capabilities on albums like Watching Movies with Sound Off, or Blue Slide Park, things like that, but as well as being able to be very thought-provoking on like The Divine Feminine or on Swimming. And again, here in this category, this is another aspect where, similarly to last category, I felt like it wasn't really him at his best in either regard. Like, there's some witty moments where it's like, okay, yeah, that's kind of cool. Like, I see where he went with that.
Yeah.
There's also there's definitely moments where, like, especially in this sense, where it is very thought-provoking, and you can tell that he really is trying to be very real with what he's saying. It still just, to me, doesn't feel like it has the cohesiveness or the attention to detail and the thought that most of his other work has in this regard. It feels like when in his career, when Mac Miller would put out an album or a song that was upbeat and witty and funny, he was like upbeat, witty, and funny to the max, and he was all in on that. Or when he was being really thought-provoking, he was kind of all in, how do I say this and phrase this in a way that's going to resonate with people and help them understand how I'm really feeling internally. And there definitely is some of this on this album, but not to the degree that his best is to me.
Yeah.
So I did give this one a 6 as well. But again, like, that's not to say that it was garbage by any stretch. Like, I do like a lot of what he's saying, and I think lyrically he's very, very talented still on this project, but not quite his best.
Yeah, so a little higher than you. Gave it a 7. Going into like the lyrics, I haven't really heard anything from Mac that's like thought provoking, except the one song Mikey showed me that had Absol on it. Like, if you're with Absol, you're probably being thought provoking. It, it just is what it is.
Unless you're Chance the Rapper, but
right.
That's neither here nor there. For
exactly.
Yeah.
So hearing this was cool because like I caught myself like really paying attention, like podcast aside, like I was just like really like just sitting there kind of like just thinking and like really like listening to it. So I appreciate that. But then the couple songs that were like a little bit more upbeat, because there's nothing like crazy upbeat.
Yeah. There's no Party on Fifth Ave.
Right.
Yeah.
That was my problem. Was not that it's not Party on Fifth Ave, but like you're saying, there's not really like energy there.
Yeah.
It's very toned down. It's very laid back, but still trying to be witty, funny, fun.
Yeah.
Which cool. Like I don't have a problem with any of those songs. Like I actually enjoyed them. Just if I want to listen to witty, joyful, doesn't care what he's actually saying or talking about Mac Miller, I will find everything else in his catalog.
Sure.
Like, I don't know because I haven't heard him, but I guarantee that I can. And so that's why I gave it a 7.
Yeah, fair enough. Kind of taking this a step further, more so talking about the concept or theme of the album. What I was pleasantly surprised with in listening to this is hearing that it was like a very cohesive body of work, that it didn't feel like it was thrown together. It felt like a project. Whether or not that's a project that Mac intended to put out in his lifetime is another story.
Yeah.
But it felt like a work that went together and flowed together, kind of exploring his feelings around life and death and seeking meaning from those things and from experiences in life. There's like a lot of musical incorporations that reflect back on what I imagine is Mac reflecting back on his childhood, whether that's like playground sounds or whether that's him like talking about how when he was a kid he wanted to be a wizard when he grew up, and like when did I become so serious kind of thing. From just outside of this, and not to get like too nerdy, but from like a psychology perspective, it's like very interesting to listen to Mac go through these kinds of things in the detail and in the way he does, because like I'm not a psychologist, like I like have very limited exposure to it, but even just from that, it's like very interesting to see where he went with what thoughts and like how those kind of interactions in his life like have given like where he's finding meaning. Anyways, it's hard to put into words, but it's very interesting to hear him go about the things that he does in the way that he does from that perspective. And he's a very thoughtful guy, so I don't entirely imagine that was just by accident that like came out that way. It's very possible that was his intent in doing it that way when he recorded it. But as a whole, this concept of like exploring life and meaning and finding meaning in interaction and in death and all these kinds of things, trying to find meaning of life, if you want to put it simply. I think it's something that him and a lot of other artists have done better before. And that's hard to say because, this album's recorded before Swimming, in chronological sequence of when he recorded these things. So it's like, this is maybe an earlier thought towards that kind of idea. So can I hold it to the same standard? And my short answer is yes, because while I may have been higher on this album when it came out from that perspective, if I were to listen to Swimming later, I'd be like, this is a better version of what he did previously, so I enjoy this more. So I gave it a 7. It is really cool. It's very interesting. That was for sure my favorite part of listening to it, was hearing him go through these stories and events and the way he reflects on it. So it was really cool.
It's crazy because I didn't know anything about what you've said about this album. Didn't know that it was pre-recorded and anything like that. Because I'll just say it very blatantly, very blunt. Because of Juice WRLD and his label, I just expect those who pass, if there's going to be an album, it's just going to be a mixtape album. That's really all it'll be.
Right.
So hearing this, kind of trying to expect that, didn't feel it at all. It was a very point A, point B, smooth sailing, concept. Did I understand what it was at the beginning? No. But at the same time, I understood to the point where there was a lot of in-depth thinking and there was a lot of just real value behind his words than what I was used to. Not saying that there's no value in some of the other songs. You hold more value in these kinds of songs rather than if you're just having fun. Very different. And then talking to you, figuring out some of the bigger picture meaning. I'm not gonna lie and say that. I see exactly what you mean now. You said that and it clicks. I can no. But the one song that I did kind of get that with was I think it was Tomorrow We'll Never Know, but it's what you were referencing, the children on the playground and talking about I'm assuming what was his mom and dad. There's a line in there. I don't know if it was his parents or somebody he knows parents. Anyways, I think it was Tomorrow We'll Never Know. Yeah. But anyways, it's cool. It runs very smoothly. Yeah. Did I find it as intriguing or interesting as a full concept? No. Yeah. Maybe I got to go back and listen with that mindset. But for right now, gave it a 6.
Fair enough. It is a fun listen to kind of hear his perspective on all that stuff, whether you're looking at it from a concept perspective or just whether you're kind of casually going through it. I think you do get that feeling of just him reflecting on his life kind of thing, and that the feeling from listening to that is it's kind of a cool experience to go through and listen to that. But jumping into the features, there's really not much presence here. Really, you get a SZA feature in which she kind of really does the whole song, where Mac's on the full instrumental. And then you get a couple of appearances from close collaborators, but not in really a feature context per se, but more of just a vocal, their voice makes an appearance more so than they're actually there for a feature. But overall, I had very few complaints about that approach. Having SZA, who, from what I understand, is a pretty good friend of his, be on that song. SZA very, very regularly kills it, from a vocal perspective. So, I don't have any problems with her being the one to show up on that track. I don't have any problems really with her showing up, period. Yeah. And then I'm also I'm very pleased that it's not one that had to be stitched together with a bunch of features. Like, there's plenty of projects from artists that are alive and past where they're like, I don't know, slap a Future feature in there.
Yeah.
And it's like, does that really fit?
Yeah.
And there wasn't any need for that. And with the subject matter he's tackling here, I didn't really feel like there was a whole lot of room for me to be like, oh, I'd really love to hear, so-and-so jump on this and talk about similar stuff. Like, it felt so personal to his life and what he was talking about that it's like, I didn't really ever catch myself listening like, oh, I'm kind of tired of Mac's voice. Like, a change up would be nice.
Yeah.
That's not to say like if you weren't to throw out like a perfect fit somewhere, I wouldn't enjoy that. Yeah. But overall, I was pretty pleased with the way the features were handled there. So I gave it a 9 in that section.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was not hot on this one.
Oh.
Yeah. I give it a 5.
Oof.
Yeah.
Tough crowd.
Yeah. I'm gonna say what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
At a later time.
Okay.
But yes, it was cool hearing like these voices, and I'm never mad at that. The only thing is like, am I appreciative that it isn't all just slapped together with features? Yeah. Absolutely, because I hate when anybody does that. Yeah. Make it a collab album at that point.
Yeah.
But it would have been cool to hear one or two different features on this. Just because for me, there were definitely songs that felt really long.
Yeah.
Or a couple songs that were very similar to each other, so I didn't realize that one ended and one started.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, I personally felt like, oh yeah, if, like, not that I was tired of Mac's voice, but it's a slower album. A switch up in any way could have helped, and I think I keep bringing him up, but Absol, like, I've heard him, the one collab with him before. Absol's a very thought-provoking artist. I know that they spent a lot of time together, and like Absol kind of showed him the ropes when it came to writing in this kind of way, and then Mac kind of like obviously he did what he does and made it his own. Sure. So I just think there were maybe throw one or two more features in there.
And like I said, while I agree to disagree on that point, that's not to say that like if you weren't to place a perfect feature in there and I'd hear it, that I'd be like, oh, it's too much. Yeah. To each their own. Yeah. Moving into the last section here, talking about overall enjoyment, replay value. I was fairly high on this album, like all things considered. I think with how low my expectations have become for albums from artists after their passing, that they don't really have that much of a hand in. With how low my expectations of those kinds of projects are, maybe this just like exceeded it so drastically that I was like, wow, this is great. Not my favorite album of all time, not my favorite Mac Miller album by any stretch either, but one that I definitely enjoyed, that I feel like has some value to come back to. There's definitely feels like a time or a place to come back and listen to this one for me.
Absolutely.
It reminds me of very similarly, but also very differently, of the Lil Yachty James Blake project from last year. Just very like mellow, lo-fi, thought-provoking stuff that musically works really well together. Aside from that kind of generalization, they're not very similar at all. Yeah. But in that context, I definitely feel like I could enjoy this one a good amount, so I gave that section a 7.
Cool. I was just right below you. It's a little bit above, right in the middle of the pack. I gave it a 6 because, like you said, there's time and a place for this album, for some of these songs. Definitely grabbed a couple the second time around. Yeah. That I see myself listening to. Not super often, but
enough.
Exactly. So, But I will say I'm more intrigued and more likely to now go listen to his catalog.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm excited to do that.
For sure. Going into the last part of the episode here, talk about some specific tracks and moments on the album. You, to me, sounded like you had a couple at least one part here that was like you were like definitely you knew which one you wanted to mention. So walk me through your best, worst, and most underrated track.
Okay, so first time through, it was hard for the best and the most underrated.
Yeah.
But from the jump, I immediately knew which one I thought was the worst.
Oh, that's
because second time through, I skipped it.
Oh gosh.
And I might have to go back and listen to it. But I hated DJ's chord organ.
Really?
Yeah, I hated it.
But this is a track.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's not even, like, I don't
That's
even
crazy.
think it's SZA's fault,
Yeah.
like, in the slightest. I think it's everything else's fault.
Wow. Crazy.
It was way too long for me.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
It didn't feel like there was any point to it. Like, because there's an intro, right, to the album before that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what is this song for? It feels like a way longer extended version of an intro and then SZA.
Yeah.
There's not even Mac. It's SZA.
Right. That's kind of the whole point. So the whole point is the instrumental is all produced by Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And really what the track is doing is letting Mac... fool around is not the right word, but like it's showcasing his production style for this project to kind of set up the rest of it. And then SZA, so like really the best way to think of it is just like it's just an instrumental song, and like your focus of the song is like, or at least my focus is drawn to the instrumental and like the way it's put together and the way the different instruments kind of play with each other and bounce off of each other. And then SZA's really just there to accentuate that. So like, in my mind, like I hear what you're saying, like it is long if you're like not expecting that. If you want to hear Mac, like you're going to be disappointed with the track.
Yeah.
The reason I'm not is because it's like my attention was never really pulled in that direction, if that makes sense. So like, it didn't really serve that purpose for me. Like I was just interested in hearing what he had put together and kind of the vibe he was going for with setting up the instrumental scape of the album.
So now I can understand why somebody else would enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think for me, because I don't have a problem with Mac producing it,
Sure.
and if you don't want to rap over it and you just want to show off your skill, by all means. So in my head, the way to fix that song for somebody like me is you take SZA off the track completely, put her somewhere else. I'm not even mad at the SZA feature.
Yeah.
Put her somewhere else where it's Mac and SZA, because that would have been cool in my eyes.
Yeah.
And get rid of that whole first part, that whole B minor. I'm like, shut up. Like, I don't care for this at all.
Yeah.
I had to skip it. It's not for me in the slightest.
Okay.
I just couldn't do it. Best and underrated, in my mind, it could be Flip-Flopped.
Yeah.
We were discussing this. Give us 2 to 3 months.
Sure.
Then we could give you a very precise pick.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I put Funny Papers as my best. It was one of the more lighthearted ones on the track that at least like I got the witty from Mac that I do enjoy. Underrated was Friendly Hallucinations. If I remember correctly, I really liked the production on this one.
Yeah.
And the storytelling aspect on this one.
Yeah.
If I remember it correctly.
I would venture to say you do. I like those aspects of that one as well. But yeah, I do think you're off your rocker a little bit for the
and I knew somebody
the DJ track. For me, the reason I didn't really feel that way is like just listening to it, I was so drawn into what he was doing that I didn't ever really feel like there was a need for anything else to be on it. And like, to me the goofy nature of the like B minor thing and like the and then like the SZA features, it all just kind of played into this like whimsical but fun and thought-provoking style that he was going for. So anyways, that's why it worked for me. But to go forward, my least favorite track, again, like you give me 2 to 3 months, it might be a little different, but at this point I didn't really love Excelsior the first couple times that I heard it. It was just vocally and production wise compared to the rest, it just really wasn't my personal choice for what I would enjoy to listen to. But as a whole, I didn't really feel like I didn't feel like you, where there was one that I was like, oh,
like clear cut.
And then my favorite was "Do You Have a Destination?" for similar reasons to yours, for the production and storytelling, and I also thought vocally he sounded pretty good on this one as well.
That's a really good one too.
My most underrated, maybe I'm crazy, like I don't know, neither of us have brought up this track so far, but I found myself enjoying it both times I listened to it, despite the fact that, like, I don't know, I don't really feel like it's... I'll digress and just say, Stoned was the song. I thought the instrumental was really fun, and then I thought it was just really catchy, witty, and kind of some of his best lightheartedness on the album. So that's what it was for me. J-Mac's listening to the song right now, trying to figure out what I'm talking about. He doesn't even remember it.
But I have to do it quietly or else, copyright.
Yeah.
And I'll agree. I'll agree. The only part that like throws me off is the knocking, when it says knocking at the door. Like the actual, it's the only thing that throws me off because it's a little offbeat, but like that's just nitpicky me. But I agree. Yeah,
it's just catchy, fun. The instrumental, I like a lot, so that was my most underrated pick. For me, overall, the album came out to a crisp 7.2 out of 10. Wow. Maybe a little higher than what I put it. Maybe in the upper 6s range, or maybe right at a 7. But overall, close-ish.
Yeah, I'm also gonna say that going through the album, I didn't get to see the full picture of the album cover.
Yeah.
Kind of dope.
Yeah, it was kind of cool.
Yeah, the whole person floating.
Yeah, with the balloon.
Yeah, pretty dope. Yeah. Anyways, I digress. 6.1 out of 10. Yeah. A cool 6. I'm cool with that because I wasn't like overly thrilled or overly like I felt like decent project. Like,
for sure.
Like right above decent, 6.
Yeah.
I can't be mad at that.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, enough said. Overall, I will say I'm very, very pleasantly surprised with how good it was, considering how low my expectations for it probably were at that time. Yeah. I still don't know how I feel as far as like, do I really feel like this, like Mac wanted this to belong in his catalog, but that's more of just like a me thing. Like, I don't know. I know of so many artists currently alive that are like, I don't want any of this out when I pass away. Like when I pass away, I'm done. Like when I retire, I'm done.
I feel like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed like Mac would have eventually given more. Maybe like when he called it quits, like I'm retired. Like you're not gonna get more music from me. And then kind of just like slid it across the table, like I'm done. Like here's one last hurrah. Like this is an older project. Like enjoy it if you want, but
for sure,
kind of a thing,
right? And like I mean, obviously we'll never know,
right?
And I don't know that it'll like weigh on my conscience like as I'm continuing listening to it, but I still do have like that curiosity, like how much of it did he really want to put out there eventually?
I definitely feel better about this than I did with how Juice's labeled things.
Yeah, for sure.
At least it was a project.
At least it was that. Well, coming up, some exciting stuff in the musical world, in the movies world. Lots of big things happening this year, and so J-Mac doesn't know any of it.
There's not one thing that I know. Not one.
Well, hopefully it's all good stuff. And we'll see you next week.
Ouch. Sorry.